Aliens, extraterrestrial life, ETs. You've probably heard of them, but have you ever seen them? Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. I'm your host Emily. Now, whether you believe in aliens or not, that's another story, but today we're counting down our list top 10 people abducted by aliens and lived to tell the tale. Number 10. Antonio Vilas-Boas. On October 16th, 1957, at night, Antonio Vilas-Boas was plowing fields when he saw what he described as a red star in the night sky that approached him, growing in size. The craft began descending to land on the field, and he decided to leave. Smart choice. He first attempted to leave the scene on his tractor, but its lights and engine died, so he decided to continue on foot. However, he was seized by a 5-foot-tall humanoid who was wearing gray coveralls and a helmet. Its eyes were small and blue, and instead of speech, it made noises like barks or yelps. Three similar beings then joined and they dragged him to inside their craft. Once inside the craft, Antonio said he was stripped of his clothes and covered from head to toe with a strange gel. He was then led into a large semicircular room through a doorway that had strange red symbols written all over it. They then took blood from him and took him to a third room where some kind of gas was pumped into the room, which made him violently ill. Shortly after this, Antonio was joined in the room by another humanoid. This one, however, was female, very attractive, and naked, so the two had sexual intercourse. Antonio was then given back his clothing and taken on a tour of the ship by the humanoids. He was then escorted off the ship and watched as it took off, glowing brightly. When he returned home, he had discovered that 4 hours had passed. Wow. Number 9. Barney and Betty Hill. The UFO sighting happened about 10:30 p.m. September 19th, 1961. Barney and Betty were driving, and Betty saw a bright point of light in the sky, and they stopped to take a look. Through binoculars, Barney saw what he reasoned was a commercial airliner, but soon changed his mind because without looking as if it had turned, the craft rapidly descended in his direction. They quickly returned to the car, and the couple watched as silent, illuminated craft moved erratically and bounced back and forth in the night sky. The object rapidly descended towards their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. The huge silent craft hovered about 80 to 100 feet above their car. Using the binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures who were peering out of the craft's windows, seemingly to look at him. One figure continued to look at Barney and communicated a message telling him to stay where you are and looking. Barney said they were wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. He drove away and they heard a rhythmic series of beeping or buzzing sounds. The car vibrated and a tingling sensation passed through their bodies, and they experienced the onset of an altered state of consciousness that left their mind dulled. A second series of beeping or buzzing sounds returned the couple to full consciousness. They found that they had traveled nearly 35 miles or 56 kilometers, but had only vague, spotty memories of this section of the road. Number 8. Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker. The Pascagoula abduction was a UFO sighting and alien abduction in 1973, which Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker claimed they were abducted by aliens while fishing near Pascagoula, Mississippi. On the evening of October 11th, 1973, 42-year-old Charles Hickson and 19-year-old Calvin Parker told the Jackson County, Mississippi Sheriff's Office they were fishing off a pier. They heard a whirling/whizzing sound, saw 2 flashing blue lights, observed an oval-shaped object 30 to 40 feet across and 8 to 10 feet high. They claimed that they were conscious but paralyzed, while 3 creatures with robotic slit mouths and crab-like pincers took them aboard the object and subjected them to an examination. Number 7. Demi Lovato. Yes, that Demi Lovato, the singer, songwriter, and actress. Demi claims they were abducted by 3 space aliens and taken to a pink and purple planet. Demi appeared on the Kelly Clarkson show and said, "I woke up in my room and there were 3 beings. They asked, 'Do you want to see your planet?' I whooshed out of the room, I hovered before our planet, then whooshed to this pink and purple planet." Now, some people are skeptical she made this up to promote her limited series streaming on Peacock, Unidentified with Demi Lovato, but if it is true, what an experience. Number 6. Audrey and Debbie Hewins. Twins Audrey and Debbie Hewins said they were abducted by aliens. "I was probably about 5 years old or so," said Audrey, "and bright blue light would come into the room and the door would open and there would be like a foggy kind of misty blue light just shining through the whole house. And these two figures would come in. We have been up in crafts and seen our house from above. They are very good at mind erasing or whatever you want to call it. They'll leave you with bits and pieces of things you can remember." Debbie added, "I remember one time being on a spaceship and standing there on the spaceship and the floor and the walls disappeared. They started doing all kinds of experiments on us when we were 12. She was initially hesitant to come forward, and Audrey claimed that after a non-human entity saved her from drowning in the ocean, she was inspired to dedicate her life to openly discussing her alien abduction experiences." Number 5. Thomas Reed. On September 1st, 1969, Thomas Reed and his family in Berkshire County, Massachusetts, saw a UFO. In the car with his mother, brother, and grandmother that night, the family noticed a group of glowing orbs dash out the roadside trees. "It came to a stop off the right side of the road," Thomas said. "Eventually, everything got really calm. It was like being in the middle of a hurricane. It was just dead silence. Then there was an eruption of crickets and frogs and it got really loud and that was it. Then the family suddenly found itself back in the car. But they had inexplicably lost 2 hours of memory. Stranger still, Reed's mother and grandmother had somehow switched car seats. He said over time the family regained some memory of the incident, including having been to a hangar-like facility with other people. We encountered something, it was definitely not of this world. The hangar thing we were in was huge, it was larger than a football field. The hallway we had seen was circular with a Y configuration, almost to control the flow of traffic, and this one room had a bowed-in wall that was rounded." Number 4. Whitley Strieber. Whitley Strieber has written fiction for more than 40 years, and he said his writing streak was interrupted one night in the late 80s by an alien abduction in upstate New York. The alleged incident occurred on the night of December 26, 1985, as Whitley slept alone in his cabin in the woods. Woken by a strange noise, he saw a small, non-human entity approaching his bed. Suddenly, it was morning. According to him, beings that he has since referred to as visitors entered his home and abducted him. He also detailed another alien encounter that he claims took place in Toronto. Asleep in his Delta Chelsea hotel room in the middle of the night on June 6, 1998, Whitley claimed to have been visited by another mysterious stranger. "I got up to open the door, thinking it was a room service waiter. It was not, it was a man described as 5.5 feet tall, older looking like someone in his 70s. He wore dark colored clothing, a turtleneck, and charcoal slacks. He claimed the visitor stood motionless by his window for nearly an hour, expounding on the dangers of creating an intelligence more evolved than its creator. He said it was the most extraordinary conversation I have ever had in my entire life." Number 3. Frederick Valentich. On October 21st, 1978, Australian pilot Frederick Valentich disappeared into thin air. At 7:06 p.m. while at 4,500 feet, after departing, he reported that an unidentified craft was following him. Melbourne Flight Service insisted that there was no traffic near him, but the pilot was adamant. He explained that it had 4 bright lights and suddenly passed 1,000 feet above him at remarkable speed. For 5 straight minutes, Frederick described its movements and shiny metallic exterior. Suddenly, he experienced engine trouble and said that the aircraft was hovering and that it's not an aircraft. Then they never heard from him again. The last sound radio officials heard was a metallic scraping sound. Authorities presumed he had crashed, but a later search of the area yielded nothing. In 2014, a UFO action group in Victoria alleged that a farmer observed a UFO nearly 90 feet in length hovering above his farm the morning following Frederick's disappearance. The farmer also claimed that the pilot's plane was stuck to the UFO, leaking oil. While the farmer said he scratched the airplane's registration number on his tractor, he never came forward. Ultimately, only a few possibilities regarding the disappearance of Frederick Valentich exist: that he crashed and his remains were never recovered, that he purposely disappeared, or, of course, that he was abducted by aliens. Number 2. Terrell Copeland. The Virgin pilot Terrell Copeland claimed that he was abducted by aliens, particularly because he was a Marine. Terrell claimed that his first experience with aliens occurred in 2007 when he captured footage of what he believed to be a UFO on his cell phone from his apartment in Suffolk, Virginia. It was an orb of light just just a big ball of light. It wasn't moving, one was solid white, the other was directly across the street from it, up 300 feet above ground, and was changing colors very rapidly, he said. He alleged that it wasn't until after he published the footage online that things truly became strange. I woke up from a nap by the sound of someone trying to enter my apartment, and I said, "Who is it?" There was no answer. You can see the doorknob moving and scratching at the door. I keep a firearm, it was on my table, and my thought was to get up and check. Despite the urge to get up, Terrell was paralyzed and only able to move his eyes. Suddenly, he heard a voice through the door tell him, "You don't need that weapon. We won't harm." He then began to experience missing hours as well. He was incapable of accounting for waking hours during a span of 2 nights. I was in a room and I saw a woman who did not have a complete human features. She had the typical black eyes that you hear about. She had an elongated skull, and that startled me. And the next memory I have is me standing on my balcony waving at this cylinder-shaped ship, he said. And coming in at number 1 is Travis Walton. On November 5th, 1975, Travis Walton was abducted by aliens and didn't return for 5 whole days. Travis's abduction began after working in Sitgreaves National Forest near Heber, Arizona. Travis and his 6-man group of vloggers were returning home when they allegedly spotted a shiny disc spanning 40 feet in diameter hovering in the sky above them. He said it was a metallic, glowing disc making some very strange sound. The closer I got to it, the more scared we all got, and they were swearing at me to get away from there, and when I got up close, it suddenly got louder and started to move. Travis then claimed that non-human beings abducted him and experimented on him until he fought them off. But as the beings poked and prodded at him on a kind of table, 5 days elapsed on Earth where Walton was officially declared missing. I became conscious in the aircraft, and I believed I was in the hospital. I was in a lot of pain, and as I became more conscious, I looked around and saw alien beings, and I just panicked. They were much smaller than me, and I think that's the reason they gave up. Once they found out they couldn't control me, they split. Later research conducted on the site of Travis's abduction showed an unusual growth rate in the trees where the craft had allegedly hovered. The trees near the site were found to be producing wood fiber at a rate 36 times greater than they had decades before. Well, that's all for our list of the top 10 people abducted by aliens and lived to tell the tale. Have you ever seen or been abducted by aliens? Let us know in the comments below. I'm your host Emily, and I'll see you next time. Peace. Pascagoula.